Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Nona Djavid, and I'm the founder of Elevate Club as well as the 1 week a month lifestyle mastermind. And in this episode for the Business Growth Architect Show, I am going to share the 4 steps of a quantum leap. We're also going to touch on what it means to be tapped in too much in the masculine energy as you're building your business and your life, and how you can balance it all out for a really unreasonable and juicy dream life and business.
And hello, fabulous person. Beate Gillette here. I am the host of the Business Growth Architect Show, and I want to welcome you to today's episode where we discuss how to navigate strategy and spirituality to achieve time and financial freedom. Truly successful people have learned how to master both, a clear intention and a strategy to execute that in a spiritual practice that will help them to stay in alignment and on purpose. Please enjoy the show and listen to what our guest today has to say about this very topic.
Welcome back to the Business Growth Architect Show, Founders of the Future with Beate Gillette, the Growth Architect. And today we have a guest that I think is very fitting after we just went through this edition of Founders of the Futures for our podcast and for our programs. And it is Dr. Nona Djavid. And why I wanted her on the show is because she talks about something a lot of you have heard about, but might not be familiar with or don't know how to initiate. And that is how to initiate a quantum leap for rapid growth. Nona, I am excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So let's talk about the most important thing first. For somebody who's kind of familiar with quantum leaps, but maybe not really, what is a quantum leap?
Okay, so when I first started to jump into the definition of a quantum leap, how does this happen? How does one quote unquote quantum leap? Because I feel like it's a phrase that gets thrown around often. Might as well be another 10x or another way of describing a really big transformation. But if you go deep into quantum physics, is when a particle moves from one layer to another layer. Now, that's super simple, but what does this have to do with me and you and the entrepreneur, the business owner, or any individual who wants to sort of achieve some level of success or some level of impact? Well, to make it practical, there's another piece to the definition of the quantum leap that we need to understand. And what that is that a quantum leap, like in order for the particle to jump from one layer to the next layer, is that particle does not require more work. So for the particle to jump from one layer to the next layer, you would think that you have to struggle, you have to hustle, you have to work really hard, except that article will just make a jump. But the distinguishing factor here is the quantum jump will happen when the particle is in a different energetic state. So once I heard this, I thought, how does this relate to my experience as an individual? How does this relate to my experience as a mom, as a business owner, as a human being? How does this relate? And over the past probably over a decade now, have a much better understanding of where I started with this, but really understanding the importance of the energetics of a business or the energetics of something that you want to experience in life versus the mechanics of things. Okay, well, what are the elements that's going to make this business really successful or have a great exit, or even this relationship to take it to the next level? What are the elements in that? And I think majority of people would say, okay, well, you have to date your wife and you have to be present and you have to, have this marketing and the sales funnel and this and that and the other. But rarely are we talking about the energy with which you would approach those mechanics that we put in our businesses or in our relationship. And I think, with your podcast, the epicenter of spirituality is, as well as business, that this is the cross-section. I always say the cross-section of a quantum leap is actually just that, where the right mechanics meet the right energetic.
I love this so much. I think that this is right there at the crux of where we are right now and what we are seeing. And I think that the external reflection of where we are at right now is a direct counteractive measure to this energetic movement that you and I have talked about before, that there's been this mass activation and this energy is really coming forward. Now, when you're in the traditional old masculine energy and the do more, hustle, manipulate the system, persuasion, pushing hard, work yourself to death, make sacrifices, what happens when you are in that energy? And is, in your opinion, are these two energies right now colliding?
Okay, let's break what you just said down a little bit, because I think it's
That's like a
so
full
powerful.
workshop for 2 days.
That was like a whole master class right there. That was a whole master class right there. So there are a couple of things in what you said that are really powerful. One, obviously the masculine energy, which is the part that gives you the structure, the direction, the motivation that you move forward in. And not all of it is actually negative, right? And then there's the other aspect that's involved, which is the feminine energy, which is more like, I'm going to give birth and I'm going to create and I'm going to nurture this project, this business idea, right? And the reality is we actually continue to need both of the energies. We need the masculine to give us the container, and I'm going to come back to this. So if somebody's listening to this and they're triggered by these concepts, like, lean into it. I'm going to break it down and I'm going to make sure everybody's on the right path. But
yeah, and let's just say that for the record, this is not about male or female bashing or diversity, equity, inclusion. It's nothing like that. The purpose of this show, really, as we are seeing this incredible shift that we, in so many ways, really a privilege to experience. I want to help you understand that. And you're very right. Let's take the judgment out and let's just look at the energies that drive certain behaviors without attaching it to a person or attaching it to even a feeling. So would that adequately describe this according to, how you feel about this as well?
yeah, absolutely. And I think, to make it clear, I think that we all have access to the feminine and we all have access to the masculine energy. The challenge has been in the past and continues to be until we make our way onto the other side or create some, balance in the situation, is that we have leaned in too much in business in the masculine energy and into the toxic masculine energy, which is the drive that leads you right into burnout. And let me be very clear, this is not a situation for women business owners. This is not just a situation for female or male or any kind of business. This is across the board. This is the consciousness of the world out there, which is the hustle culture. Like you said, it could involve manipulation, too salesy, the push, the drive to make something happen, no matter what the outcome is for people that are involved in that particular business or relationship or any of that.
Winning.
Winning. So that's definitely a trait of the masculine. Again, none of it is wrong, is bad or good. We're not saying feminine energy is good and masculine energy is bad. You need the balance of both. When I first started my first business, I had $300 in my bank account and I moved down to Southern California and I went to work and I did what other people had told me to do. My coaches and mentors, mainly male coaches and mentors, but also even some female coaches and mentors, that told me, you go to work and you hustle and you knock on doors and you do the sales thing and all of those things. And I did that. And I had a near 7-figure business and I completely burnt out. Here I was checking off all the things. I had a really good business, I had 13 employees. It was making money. It was standardly successful to the standards of today's society. I just got married. I had my child. I checked off all the boxes, got my degree from Berkeley, got my doctorate, and here I was completely burnt out. Why? Because I had forgotten all the other juicy stuff that exists in life, and I was really making decisions and moving forward in life and creating quote success based on the definitions that existed out there in the consciousness, and really subscribing to the hustle culture. And when I first started to speak about this topic, I thought I was going to be approached by a lot of women who are burnt out from this process. And guess who walks up to me after every stage that I'm on? Men who have been building businesses, who have had successful exits from their big companies. And here they are feeling like they missed out on what was important, which is really exiting outside of the traditional definitions of success, being present and having gratitude and approaching the mechanics of their business from a place of abundance instead of a place of scarcity. So those are the things that will help you quantum leap, or these individuals quantum leap, instead of doing more of the mechanics. Because ultimately, 70-80% of entrepreneurs are burnt out. Over 40% of them they would be considered clinically anxious or clinically depressed. Why? Because we haven't learned to integrate both sides of what we're talking about, the energetics as well as the mechanics. We've just pushed too hard in the mechanical portion of things.
I refer to it really as the matrix, for lack of better words, and because I think it's an example that lots of people can relate to, is that we've been taught that this is the way it is. It's been handed down to us. It's genetically embedded in our DNA. What I find very interesting is that specifically right now, when these systems that have been built really primarily by men for men, that have failed many diverse or different or unique individuals, and really always failed men too, because let's face it, I don't think that men really want to work like this anymore either. What is prompting the dissatisfaction? Is it more and more people are figuring out that it is flawed? Is it that a false promise has been given? Have we been misled? Or is it just the way it is?
I think all the above in the consciousness of the world, right? Like, you bring in all of these points that have led us to get to this point where we are burnt out in the things that we are doing, and in following the matrix. I call it this vicious success struggle box that we've all been sort of living in, or the frames of the success and struggle box frames that we have been wearing. Because if you think about it, even just how we raise our children. I have 2 boys, and just the other day, and I teach this stuff. So this is how ingrained the idea of struggle and work and stay in the box and follow the things and check off all the things in the matrix. This is how strong it is for somebody who steps outside of the matrix and has created truly an unreasonable way to do business in life. I caught myself the other day telling my children, you do this, so you get this. You clean your room before you do this. You have great job cleaning after yourself. It's part of what makes them great human beings, and hopefully one day great husbands to somebody. However, all of the validation that we have received as children has been through doing. You do this, if you get an A+, if you are the mother's helper, if you're the teacher's helper, if you are adding value in this particular way that is useful to society and useful to the parents and the caregivers, then you are worthy. So then no wonder, the 40-year-olds and the 30-year-olds and the 50-year-olds of the world are now recognizing, wait a second, I'm done with the doing. I'm done with the hustle. And I wish I could say that this pivotal moment that we're sitting at right now, which I'm so privileged to be living in, this pivotal moment where the consciousness makes a shift. I wish I could tell you, listen, this has been happening because we're so conscious and we're so aware, and we just have studied how things have worked out, and now we have this light bulb moment. But unfortunately, at least in my experience, majority of people are coming to an experience to go where they are completely burnt out, tired, a heart attack later, a health issue later, a couple of divorces later, where they go, there's got to be something different.
All right.
So this breakthrough is not so much a point of so much awareness in my experience or so much consciousness.
It's the
really
exhaustion of every other way. Yes.
Yes, it's the exhaustion of every other way. Great way to put it.
Yeah, exactly. And exhaustion, it really is. So now that is a great leadway for us to go into quantum leaps. Is there a reason? Has anybody ever really figured out why quantum leaps exist? Is there a method to it, or is it still kind of mysterious?
I think there's a lot of complicated theories around this, but I think if you simplify it to the fact that a quantum leap will only happen if you shift your energetic state. And then if you translate that into your day-to-day life and go, well, how does this apply?
I think that the concept of energy is really simply explained. Somebody said to me, well, do you believe in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and radio? And if you believe in radio energy that somebody somewhere transmits, and if you have the right frequency you can receive, or even your Bluetooth, then you already agree to the concept of energy, because it's the same thing. So to your point, I do believe that if we believe that energy is not something external that just happens, but something internal we can, I don't want to say manipulate, but we can work with, or we can hone as a skill or as a craft, now we're talking about quantum leaps. So what do I now do to get aware of this energy to be able to initiate a quantum leap? Because you said you had 4 steps, and I want to make sure that we give our audience the whole system to really understand that there is a frequency within yourself you need to change. And how do you change it? What do you do to get there?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to share with you before I go into the 4 steps. Right before this podcast, what do? You had me meditate and close my eyes and make sure that we set the intention for this episode for the audience to get the best value out of this conversation. When I opened my eyes, I saw the world differently. I felt differently. I felt more connected to you. I felt more connected to what I was going to talk about just by setting that intention. I know it sounds woo, but I actually have tons of research to back this up. My background is in neurology from Berkeley. So I can tell you the nervous system, the way that it operates is by sending signals between the brain and the rest of the body and then out in an electrical magnetic field. So we're made out of a lot of things, but there is a lot of energy that's involved in our electromagnetic field, or in our energetic field is what I call it. So the 4 steps of a quantum leap, right? The 4 steps of a quantum leap. One would say, okay, I want a quantum leap in my business. I want to 10x my business in a short period of time, and I want to collapse time and do it in such a short period of time, and I want to do it a certain way. I would say, okay, but before you do that, before you even get into the action, get into the doing, get into the structure of the business or life, you have to start with the end result in mind. And I call this an unreasonable vision for life, unreasonable vision for your business. I have a mastermind where I have a lot of sort of unicorn founders and entrepreneurs in there, where every single one of them has done things that are totally outside the box. They've bet on themselves in such a way that not factual. Like it would be like, that is not possible, but they've done it and they've had massive exits. They have really amazing, incredible businesses. They've been able to scale and multiply. And it all started with having an unreasonable vision and building certainty around the fact that I can have this, this could be mine. And if we're taking it back to the nervous system doesn't originally feel safe in that unreasonable vision. So my next level for my business, if there was some level of magic and it happened right here, right now, I would go into a panic attack. I wouldn't know what to do with it because it would mean more team members. Maybe it would mean more financial freedom. So like your nervous system goes into a panic attack because it doesn't feel safe there. So in some ways, in the very first step of a quantum leap, of getting to the other side of this big leap, you have to know where where we're landing. What's the outcome that we would like to experience? And I think the more unreasonable this vision is, the better. Because if you're just coming up with SMART goals, a SMART goal by definition, you already know how to do it. Your current identity already knows how to do the SMART goal?
I never in my life have used SMART goals. I have a program that actually promises to not be that because I do not believe in that. I think it's okay to say for accountability if I keep my word. I think that's different. But that's not a goal. That's an accountability. So if I say, in order to have this unreasonable goal, I need to, I figure that I'll have to make connections and network and get my name out there. And I'm going to commit to doing 10 of these. I can be accountable for that. But I very, very nervous almost to call anything a SMART goal because I find it is back in the box.
Back in the box. Because by definition of a SMART goal, measurable, timely, all these things, it
tangible,
requires
realistic.
Forget it. You lost me. I blocked that one out of my system. But here's the thing. All of those, by definition, they require you to stay the same because you already know how to do it. If you already know how to do it, then you are not going to have any evolution in the process. Your identity stays the same.
All right. So let's move on to the next. So the first thing is to really set my unreasonable goal.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So then the second step in the process I call expanding your identity to match this unreasonable vision. If you set SMART goals, you're not going anywhere with your identity. You're going to operate from the same identity. And I think with all the mechanics you're going to put into it, best you're going to get is some incremental growth. You're definitely not going to have a quantum leap. And if you try really hard and if you are subscribed to the hustle culture, it's going to lead you down the path of burnout. So this is why the second step is really important because it's helping you expand your identity in a way you are finding out who you need to become to be a match for that next level. Just give you an example. I think the easiest example of this for business owners or entrepreneurs is when they go from business owner to CEO, or if they go from practitioner, owner into CEO, right? One is in the business doing all the business things. There's a lot of stresses. You're handling all the things. And then the other is a visionary. The identity of these two is wildly different. So if I have an entrepreneur who says, I want time freedom and I want to step into CEO, I go, first of all, what's the unreasonable vision? So let's lay that out in a 20-page paper to give it to your nervous system. And then in step 2, let's identify the traits of the CEO that you do not have, that you need to operate from, that you need to express more of. Let's also identify the pieces and the traits of your personality that are strongly you're holding on to, like I'm a hard worker and I do things a certain way and whatever. Let's see what parts of the traits of your current identity are also holding you back from becoming the CEO of your company. And I think this is where a lot of exploration happens. And I want to address something in this step because people will get lost and say, am I faking it? Right? Is the imposter syndrome.
Oh, the fake it till you make it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, it didn't occur to me, but I was explaining this to somebody and they were like, so do you mean I need to fake it? And I was like, no, that's definitely not what I said. Because ultimately, you have to believe it. Not only that, if you are showing up in your limitations, if you're showing up in the restrictions that you have put on yourself, if you're showing up less than full potential, in reality, that's what faking it, because you're born with unlimited potential. You're born and you literally have all potential. There's some genetics involved and there's circumstances definitely involved, but all the pieces of your identity you picked up from your parents and experiences of life. So by the time you get here and you say, I want to be the CEO, you've only picked up the small business owner traits along the way. So you can intentionally choose different parts of your personality or to express them more.
I have such a great example for this, Nona. I was mentoring a class, and There was this one woman, she says, I'm hiring a virtual assistant. I want to pay between $3 and $5. And why would I overpay? And I said, well, I pay my virtual assistants $15, $16 in the Philippines. She says, that's outrageous. Why would you pay so much? And I said to her, because I believe in abundance. And she was giving me so much pushback. And then I said, didn't you just say you signed $3 million in contracts? How does somebody act who has a $3 million pipeline? I said, is this something you should be concerned about, and whether you pay $3 or $15 to a virtual assistant? She says, well, that's ridiculous. I said, that's the point.
That's the point. Yeah. What a great example.
Isn't that the best example? And I said, how much time and energy are you spending on this? On, and the emotional energy of feeling taken advantage of, and instead of saying, I'm going to find the best one for the job that I don't have to train. And when I said that to her and she said it was ridiculous, that's when it really clicked for her. And I said, that's what we mean. You have to become the person that acts like they're running a $3 million business.
Exactly. So I say, if you have a resistance or something like this, what you're describing that's popping up, you really have two options. You either cut it out, so you don't hire, or you shift your energy towards it. And like you're saying, is it really worth for someone, the next version of you that has a $3 million contract or $10 million exit? Is that how the next version of you would show up? And so decision-making processes, standards, what kind of relationship you have with money, what kind of relationship you have with time. I mean, I have 10 categories that I go through for people to determine the identity of the version of themselves that's already living this unreasonable vision. And that's what a great example to basically put it in practice. So where are you showing up out of alignment and playing small in your current identity? And it's not easy, because we've picked up these hyper identities from a place of trauma. I'm a caretaker, I'm a healer, I'm a fixer, I'm an entrepreneur. All of these are really a trauma response. So it's not easy to unhook from them, but you can set the intention and begin the work of unhooking from those addictions.
Yes, and I'm not saying go buy a private yacht, because the 500 million exit founder would have a yacht. Let's not go there quite yet. But we're talking about behavioral changes in how you show up as the person you need to be who has a $500 million exit. So let's move on to step number 3.
Yes. And the third part of the process is the embodiment. So it's like, okay, in my body, embody, right? In my body, how do I feel as the next version of myself, right? I tell my students, how would that version show up in her or his body while she's drinking her coffee, while she's getting on a podcast, while she's answering the phone? Because there's research around this too. That next future version of you has a different posture. You've already done the things and experienced the things. The posture is different. The breathing is different. Physiology is completely different. One version versus the next version. So this is more like, how can I practice and tap into the version of me that's already had the exit, the version of me that's already the CEO, the version of me that's already in a great relationship in whatever category, right? And then how do I feel in my body? What's my posture like? What's my breathing like? What does my health look like? And feeling that in the small things that you existingly do in your 3D world anyway. So this becomes more about experiencing her or him in the now, in this existence.
When I was running my first business, I remember there was a moment where my employee said to me, why are you running around in a suit? And heels. This is your house. You work out of your house. And I remember saying, because where I'm going, this is what the person who does it looks like, right? I mean, looking back, I probably would not recommend wearing heels in a house when nobody's watching for other reasons. Is there anything else that we need to know about how to initiate quantum leaps?
There's a very last step in the process, which I'll go over in a second. I just want to go back and say something about wearing the suit in the house, because I think it goes beyond what you wear and how you do your hair, which shoes you wear, any of that. I think it's the energy you bring to the table. So if you wore the suit and it made you feel powerful and it made you feel like I'm in this position and I'm going to take this company to the next level, that is what's going to carry the company to the next level. It's not the suit itself. It's how you felt and how you filled up your energetic field as a result of wearing the suit. So that really tunes into, and it goes really well with the embodiment, step 3 of the process.
Thank you. Excellent. All right. So let's move on to the final step.
Yes, the 4th step in the process is taking unreasonable action. Unreasonable action. So, the beginning of this conversation, I mentioned I had $300 in my bank account when I moved down to Southern California, decided to start a business, didn't know anybody. And I remember I made a deal with the person who had hired me at the time. I wasn't really hired. I was an independent contractor, which meant I have to work for every penny. And I made a deal with my landlord to sort of give me 30 days. So I had 30 days to make everything work. And the most, like, if I talk to a financial advisor, okay, not that I could afford one at the time, but if I talk to a financial advisor, if I talk to anybody who has lived any kind of life in the matrix, which would have been 99% of everybody I knew, and I said, I'm going to take 200 of this $300 that I have, and I'm going to join a networking mastermind. They would have been like,
how are you
what
going to
is,
eat? Where are you going to
how
get
are
your
you going to
groceries?
eat?
Yes.
Exactly. How are you going to eat? Where are you going to get the food? Like, you don't even technically have shelter, right? You need 30 days of work to be able to pay for this. I did that anyway. So that was an unreasonable action that I took, and it turned out to be really the foundation, not just because that decision was really pivotal, but also the energy with which I approached a certainty I had on the other side of this quantum leap that I was going to make, the jump that I was going to make. And I took $199 of that, $200 of the 300, and I participated in a mastermind that was going to take me to the next level, that I was going to meet people, even whether it was going to be through osmosis or real life, they were going to help me some way build my business, or I was going to learn from them and of course add value as much as I could in my early 20s. If it wasn't for that unreasonable decision and action that I took, I would not be sitting here now with, multiple $1 million companies, 7-figure companies, investments, and the life that I've created for myself and my children. I think unreasonable action is making decisions based on where you are headed, not based on where you are right now.
Yeah. And I think that in entrepreneurship, we see this very often when people launch programs without having built them, when we see people take ideas and do proof of concept, selling it, so to speak, or offering it to clients before they have even put the first pen to paper, so to speak. And that is an unreasonable action, is to lean yourself out of the window. So I do really encourage our listeners today to think about this from this perspective of unreasonable actions are not about bragging, arrogance, or pretension, but unreasonable actions about things that you truly believe in. This all goes back to the belief system, because that generates the energy. Is, do I really believe that this will help me? And that's why 10 people can go to the same class, and one person turns it around and makes it amazing, and 9 others say we got nothing out of it because they were not taking the actions, or it wasn't creating the resonance, or they were in a different mindset space. So we are at time in the show. So I wanted to just ask, is there anything else that you want to add that will help our audience to understand these concepts of quantum leaping? And is there a first step that they should start with right now when they're finished with listening to the interview?
Okay, yes. I think the very first thing to do is, you probably, if you're listening to this, you fall into 2 categories. One category might be, I know exactly what I want. I know exactly where I'm taking my life and where I'm taking my business. Another category might look like, I have 3 bullet points of things that I want to accomplish, but I haven't really expanded on it. So if you're in the first category, you know exactly where you're going to take it. I would suggest you sit down, create some thinking hour. I suggest, again, a couple hours a week where you sit down and you dream about where it's going to go, what experiences it's going to create for you, what kinds of relationships you'll have. And if you fall into the second category, in which you have 3 bullet points, then sit down with that and expand on that, give it some wings, add some juice to it, and see where that takes you. It becomes much easier to start to think about identity and embodiment and action when you have a really good visual description, kinesthetic, using all of your senses, and you know exactly where you are headed.
I love that very much. And for somebody who now wants to explore more of your work or potentially work with you, where should we send them?
I always love connecting with people personally. So if you have listened to this and this has resonated with you, just connect with me on Instagram or social media anywhere and say, hey, I found you on this podcast, and I'll be happy to send you. I have a 90-minute training on quantum leaps, which obviously we couldn't take 90 minutes to go over, but there's 90 minutes. It's absolutely free as long as you mention this podcast, and I'll be happy to send that over to you as a gift.
Wonderful. That's very generous. And we make sure all of this is in the show notes. And that's it for us for today. Thank you so much, Nona, for being here and sharing your insights. I take a lot away from the conversation, especially the reminder, quantum leaps. Of course. Why didn't I remember this sooner? So thank you so much for all the time and love and attention you gave to our audience today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I love that.
And that's it for us for today. Please share this episode with somebody who could use a quantum leap in their lives right now and help us reach more people. And with that, I say goodbye and until next time.
So appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for listening to the entire episode. Please subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star review, a comment, and share this episode with one more person so that you can help us help more people. Thank you again. Until next time. Goodbye.